Hello there, this is Dimitris Christou, and for this video tutorial we will be using procedural modeling to build something nice. And we will be using object modifiers, and it will be super easy to create variations of the starting object. So let's begin. I have the default scene open here, and we have the default cube selected. I'll move over to the object modifiers, click this little icon to move to the object modifiers. And I'm going to click add modifier, and I will add a simple deform modifier. Okay. I'm going to use the taper, or perhaps the twist. Okay. The twist modifier. Or is it the taper? Okay, it's a taper. I'm going to set the factor up to 8. And you can see how the taper modifier here twists the object. Let's bring it down to take a good look. It works at about here, about 1.5, and from 2 on it twists the cube a bit. And this is pretty much how we want it to work, so I'm going to bring the factor up to 8 again. Alright. Okay. So we have the cube here. You can see how it turned out. I'm going to add another modifier, and it is going to be an array. We want the array to move up on the z-axis, so I'm going to set the relative offset x from 1 to 0 and set the z to 1. It's x, y, and z for the relative offset. Okay. I'll increase the count. Let's set it up to say 8 or something, and we'll see later on. And what I'll also do is click add modifier and add a remesh. Okay. And moving down to the remesh options, I'm going to change the mode from sharp to blocks. And what I'll also do is uncheck the remove disconnected pieces. Okay. So as you can see, we're having an interesting construct here. And you can see that I'm changing the count and changing the way this one looks. Okay. You can also increase the octave depth from 4 up to 5 and get a more detailed construct. Okay. Let's bring it down to 4. And what I'm going to use now is another simple deform modifier. Let's add it. And for this one, we're going to use taper. Okay, again, and I'll set the factor. Let's set it down so we're creating a pyramid like construct here, and you can see how it looks. Okay, looking good. And I'm going to, let's set the factor to -1 to have a nice round value here. Okay, or perhaps -0.9. okay, at about there. And finally, I'm going to add, let's add a bevel modifier. And I want to round my corners here a bit. And I'm going to bring the bevel width here down. Let's set it from 0.1 to 0.01. Okay. Looking good. So you can see we're having this little construct here. It was pretty easy to build. We've only used the default cube. And let's add a material to it. We already have a material. I bring the specular density down to 0, and I'm going to bring the diffuse color down. Let's make it darker at about here, and I'm going to add a texture. We already have a texture. I'm going to change the type from none to clouds, and I'll set the basis from Blender Original to cell noise. I'll bring the depth down to 1 and set the size. Let's set it up to about 6 or 7. Okay. Looking good. Let's check both as well. Okay, we're having this little default color here applied. I'm going to change this one to a very dark, almost black color. Okay, we're good at about there. Now what I have the material applied to my object. I'm going to create a duplicate, Shift D and X to move the duplicate on the X-axis. Let's move it to the side. And move back to the modifiers. What I'll do for this one is increase the count. And you can see that just by increasing the count we're having a different construct, and you can also change the look of the construct by changing the deform factor here for the taper simple deform modifier. Okay, let's leave it at about here. Okay, looking good. I'm going to hit Shift D to create another duplicate and X to move it on the X-axis. Alright. And what you can also do, we have the second simple deform here, the taper, and we can also check the lock one axis. Okay, here we go, and you can see that it looks a lot different now. Okay, we have variation of this one, and it only applies the taper on one of the X or Y axis. Okay, let's create a duplicate, Shift D and X. Let's create another one, move it to the X-axis at about here, and again going to bring the count up to 9. I'm going to increase the octave depth up to 5. Okay, I'm going to uncheck the lock Y-axis, and you can see how this one looks. Okay, you can also bring the factor, let's bring it at about here. Okay, so we're getting less a taper on the construct here. Okay, let's build a few more. Shift D on the X. Let's move this one to the side as well, and I'm going to make this one taller. Let's increase the count. Okay, looking good. And let's also change the factor here. Let's bring it down at about here. I like it. I like how this one looks. And we're copying the objects, so the objects are now using the same material. Let's create a couple more. Shift D on the X. Okay, going to bring this one, to bring the count down for this one. Let's set it down to 6. Okay, this one looks pretty interesting. Let's bring the octave depth down to 4. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to lock the X-axis this time around. Okay, looking good. And let's create one or two more. Shift D on the X. Let's move this one to the side, and we're building some nice sci-fi interesting buildings here. For this one I'm going to bring, let's bring the array down, set it to 8, and it already looks pretty nice. Let's keep it as it is, and let's build a couple more. Shift D on the X. Okay, now for this one I'll bring the octave depth down to 4, and I'm going to, let's also bring the count down. Okay, looking good as it is. And by adding the bevel here, we're getting some nice change on the surfaces here, and this one will look good, especially if you're planning to move close to the object. Shift D and X to create another copy and move it on the X-axis. Let's move it at about here, and I'll change the lock to the Y-axis. I'll also bring the deform factor down at, let's set it at minus 0.9. Okay, and I'm going to make this one slightly higher, okay. And as you can see, we can create some nice buildings here, some nice variation, just by changing the modifiers here. Shift D, let's build a couple more. And I'm building lots of them because we're going to use them in a particle system. And if you use lots of objects, you are going to get better results, obviously. I'm going to set the factor. Let's set this one close to 0. Let's set it to 0.3. Okay, looking good. And the final one, select this one, Shift D on the X. Okay. And I'll bring count up. Let's make this one a tall one. Okay, and about here. I'll also bring the, you can see that as I'm increasing the count, the remaze modifier uses less cubes. So this one has less detail than one of the buildings that it's smaller. So if you want to bring it up and still have the detail, you have to increase the octave depth for the remaze modifier. Let's set it up to 5. Okay. And now I'm going to change the factor a bit. Let's set it at about here. Okay, looking good. Now that we have our buildings here set up, what I'll do is select them all, holding down the Shift key, select them all. Okay. And now hit Ctrl and G to group them all in a group. You can change the name of the group. Let's set it to buildings. Okay. And I'm going to save this one file. Save as. Let's save it as buildings. Okay. And you can use those to build your city. Perhaps we'll see it on the next Blender video tutorial. So this is Dimitris Christou. You can see what we can do in a matter of minutes using procedural modeling. This is very easy and hopefully very easy to follow as well. So this is it, and thanks for watching.